Good evening. I'd like to share my story with you. I was much intrigued by watching a single story on YouTube. It reminded me how we all are products of our environments and our cultures. And I've had an interesting cultural experience, shifted greatly from one extreme to almost another. So I'd like to start by taking you back to 1915. In 1915, this family, 5 children, a mother and father, located in Russia. There's something brewing in Russia at this time, politically. Nobody's quite sure where it's going to lead. But in 1917, that same family, the Stern family, would escape from Russia during the Russian Revolution and land in Boston, Massachusetts. The Stern family is my father's family. Although there's only 5 children there was a sixth, my dad. He was born 10 months later, after their arrival to Boston, on December 25th, 1917. He was born to Isaac and Frances Stern, Russian immigrants, Orthodox Jews. Let's fast forward, and let's go now to 1920. In 1920, Sarah and Max Adelman immigrated from Lithuania. They landed in Boston, Massachusetts. Immigrants, Orthodox Jews. We'll fast forward one more time to 1945. In 1945, the youngest child of 6 from the Adelman family and the youngest child of 6 from the Stern family were married at Boston City Hall. It was 1945, the war had just broken out, and my father, Jacob Stern, married my mother, Rosalie, and then left immediately for Europe. He left through the Boston Naval Shipyard, which wasn't too far off, and then 3 years later, my mother and father reunited in Virginia Beach, Virginia. And then let's fast forward from there. Now we're in 1953. In 1953, we now have this family, the Stern family, Rosalie and Jacob Stern, and their 3 children, Evelyn, Michael, and Marcie, the little one in the middle. All of us were raised in the Boston area. My home was in Winthrop, Massachusetts, after a short time, 3 years, in Roxbury, Massachusetts. The time in Winthrop was spent around other people just like me. A lot of Orthodox Jews, many, many people who immigrated from Russia and Eastern Europe, and all landed in this small little area, almost like village-like, where we maintained our traditions, our religion, we ate the same foods, we celebrated together, and we all kind of looked alike. Had dark hair, dark eyes, swarthy skin. No one in my family went to college. No one was educated beyond high school. But I was a little stubborn thing, and I was curious. So I decided to apply to college, and I did, and I was accepted to a school that actually gave me the tuition to go, and that was American International College. From American International College, I learned many things, but when I arrived, I learned that I had chosen a school that was in the heart of a very dangerous area that folks around me called a ghetto. I had not really heard of a ghetto before, nor had I seen the people that I was about to see. People of color, people with different cultures, people with different religions, different celebrations. It was a very strange experience for me. I was 17 years old and totally out of my element. I had no idea really who I was, never mind who everyone else is, and what all these cultures were about that I had never experienced. After my second year of college, I decided to spread my wings a bit. And I went ahead and flew to Europe and then on to Israel. And I spent the summer in Israel. And what I learned was there was a whole culture of people there. And a lot of people who were just like me, from families who had immigrated from Western Europe, Eastern Europe, and Russia. When I came back home, I was a changed person. I started experimenting with different foods and experimenting with different religious experiences. And everything changed for me. It broadened my scope. It made me question a lot of things that I had been raised to believe. It made me actually a better person. When I graduated from college, I moved to San Francisco. Who knows why it was San Francisco, but it seemed like an adventurous thing to do, so I got in my car and I drove to San Francisco, and there I was. And boy, what a different culture that was. So now we are in the heart of the 70s and lots of things going on in San Francisco, and I was amazed at the people that I was meeting. They were the end results of the flower children, and it was a really wonderful time to be in the city of San Francisco. We can fast forward to my family. No pictures tonight. But my family, my 3 children, they all look different than my family. My husband has blonde hair and blue eyes, and 2 of my children have blue eyes. I would come home and go visit my extended family. They would kind of look at my children and wonder, that's odd. But we made our own culture. I am no longer an Orthodox Jew. I am a Reformed Jew, as are my children. And they're beautiful children, and they're a mix of a variety of cultures and experiences. College for them was never a question of whether you would go or you wouldn't go. It was part of our culture of education. And my 3 children attended college, and they graduated from college, and they have now moved on and created their own cultures. And so it's really interesting to me to experience in my thinking process how I started with a definite single culture, a single story, and how I emerged after so much time into something that is quite different than I would have experienced if I had stayed where I was born. Sometimes I go back to Winthrop, Massachusetts for class reunions or to visit friends, and I see people who have stayed in the same region for a very long time. And I notice the vast differences between the folks that stayed and what they do for entertainment, what they do for cultural experiences, how they celebrate their holidays, and how I live here in California. Without those experiences, however, I think I would have been shortchanged because I have come out of a very, very small box. And from that box, I have grown into a different human being than most of the family that I know. And I add a different dimension. I add a different richness than they. And we share those cultures. Most recently, my brother, who's still on the East Coast, was trying to explain to me that my values and my experiences are very unlike his. And for that reason, he really doesn't understand some of the decisions that I make or some of the comments that we share. And we had a very long discussion about our cultural values and how much they are different. But I would say to anyone who has not experienced differences that it is really important to understand others, to experience some of those things for yourself, because it's very difficult to genuinely feel or experience what other people are experiencing unless you've actually experienced it yourself. So with that, I will say thank you. I hope that you have all learned something more about me and my culture, and good night.